The rain had thinned to a fine mist when I first saw her. She was walking the shoulder of a mountain road, head down, a backpack slung loosely across one shoulder like it barely had weight. Her hair hung in damp tangles, and her bare feet slapped against the pavement as if she hadn't noticed the cold. I slowed, headlights cutting through the fog, and when she turned her face toward me, there was no surprise in her eyes. It was as if she'd been waiting for me to arrive. She climbed in without hesitation, water dripping from her cuffs onto the floorboard, and folded her hands in her lap. For a long while, she just watched the dark pines slide past the window. Then she spoke, her voice low and hoarse from days of silence. "I used to live in these mountains," she said, "but I swore I'd never come back. Now the mountains are calling my name again. You can keep the heater where it is, Jack. I'm not cold yet. The cold lives higher up. Down here it's only the air doing impressions. You want a name? Use Mara. It's close enough to the one they use when they call." "No. Don't say it back. Please. They get ideas when you repeat things. I grew up in a logging town up the next ridge, the kind of place where the diner knows your order and the post office still smells like paper and raincoats. The mountains were not scenery. They were walls, teachers, fathers that didn't say much unless you crossed a line. My mother kept a jar of nails by the door and a jar of salt on the sill. She said both kept things tight. Granddad kept an old carbide lamp on the mantel from the years he took a lunch pail into the mine. We dusted it every Sunday, same as a family picture. We didn't light it. Light is a promise where I'm from. Don't make promises for show. The voices started when I was little. You know how kids hear their name on the wind and make a game of it? I didn't want the game. First time was near the water tank at the edge of town. I heard my mother call the way she did when I'd gone too far past supper time. Just that half-laughing warning tucked inside my name. I turned, all ready to be scolded, and there was only the tank and the chain-link fence and the mountain standing like a held breath beyond. I went home and my mother was at the sink, flour on her wrists. "You came quick," she said, like she'd been about to fetch me. "I didn't call you." Then she dried her hands and put a little salt across the threshold with 2 fingers, quick as a woman hiding a bruise. That was the rule in our house. If the mountains call, you don't answer. If you must answer, because your mouth is a traitor, you don't use words, you use noise. Whistle, cough, spit. Never give them the shape of yourself. "Jack, I can feel you looking for a place to cut in." You can ask it. Everyone asks the same one. What are the voices? I don't know. They are what the rock keeps when the people go. They wear the sound of the ones you loved, and sometimes the ones you feared. They speak with the kind of patience only stone has. They're not songs. They're not warnings. They're appetites that learned pronouns. When I was 12, I slipped. On purpose, not on purpose. I don't know anymore. There's a deer path behind the ball field that takes you up to a notch the kids use for a lookout. Fresh snow had come in thin, pretty lies over the ice. I went up with a thermos and the lamp of my cheap phone, and somewhere between the 3rd switchback and the place where the fir roots make steps, I heard my brother's voice. He'd been gone 2 years at that point, the kind of gone a family makes small talk around. He said my name the way he did when he'd found a nest or a good place to set a snare, a secret to be shared. I answered. I said what? I said where? I said wait. And the mountain answered all 3 in footing, in air, in white. I went down the slope on my side and my back, the way a body learns it isn't made for falling. When I stopped, the night was a tin bowl and the trees were the spoon. My breath came out like things running away from me. I called Eli, and I heard Mara back, from above, from below, from where the rock was pretending to sleep. That was the first time I tasted mica in my mouth like pencil shavings and knew the mountain speaks when you give it a mouth. My mother came for me with a rope, the carbide lamp bucking on her hip like a small animal. She tied me to her without asking, like I was a bale, and hauled me up with curses she only used on the stove. When we got home, she took the nails from the jar and tapped one into each corner of my room's window sash and one into the baseboard behind the headboard. "You'll hear," she said, tired into her bones. "Just don't answer with words." That night the wind said Mara in whisper and whistle and hinge, and I coughed until my throat bled because I was trying to obey. You can laugh at nails and salt. At lamps no one lights. City years taught me to laugh too. I left as soon as my legs were long enough to look like they belonged to a bus. I traded mountains for work that smelled like toner and carpet cleaner. I learned to have lunch in glass atriums where rain looked like decoration. I thought the voices had been a game the old place played on tired people. But stone remembers. It doesn't let go because you bought different shoes. The first time it found me in the city, it wasn't even a proper mountain voice. It was the HVAC duct outside my office washroom, giving back my mother's tired Mara, with the exact little upward curve at the end that meant answer me so I can stop worrying. I laughed. I even said, "Not now, Ma." The duct breathed out warm air that smelled like dust and old pennies in last winter. I stopped laughing and went back to my desk and worked hard enough to make noise in my own head. After that, it grew bolder. It liked ceilings. It liked stairwells. It liked the space between elevator doors when they're almost closed and your heart bumps because you're not sure you'll make it. Once it said my name from a sewer grate as I passed, the exact voice of my brother, Eli, when he was 8, asking if I wanted the red marble or the blue. I walked on. I did what the old rules said. I didn't answer with words. I hummed nonsense, chewed gum louder than is polite, counted prime numbers out loud like a crazy woman to give my mouth something else to do. People stared. City people don't like to be reminded that mouths can save you. When the call came at 3 a.m, I knew it wasn't air playing tricks. It came through my apartment wall from the next building over, the one with the broken brick where pigeons sleep. It came in my mother's voice at first, then in Eli's, then in the exact tone of my grandfather the week before he died. The way a body relieved of pain can be gentle once more. They said, "Come home." They said my name like it had been borrowed and needed returning. I put the sheet over my head like a child and said my multiplication tables until even my fear got bored. I lasted 3 nights. On the 4th, I packed a bag too small and left the plants on the counter with their mouths open and the blinds half closed the way grown-ups are supposed to leave them to fool thieves. The train north was mostly empty. Trees came back to me in the glass and the sky took a heavier color. I didn't tell anyone I was going because it would have sounded like confession. Forgive me, I have returned to my stupid. The road up to the old town hadn't changed. Roads that know their job don't get excited. The diner had a new neon O, but the same coffee, the same waitresses with bracelets of order tickets around their wrists. The post office man squinted like he'd put me in the wrong pigeonhole and was embarrassed to find me in person. The mountain didn't speak right away. It let me walk the aisles of the hardware store, touching the hammers like they were relatives. It let me stand in the supermarket and read labels as if salt and nails had been replaced by turmeric and rubber bands. It waited until I slept. You ever sleep in a bed you outgrew? Everything in the room is too true. The posters on the wall don't know about the things you've done since you left. The ceiling has arguments you lost. I lay there with the nails my mother drove still rusting politely in the corners and thought, I am safe now because I am keeping the old rules. Sometime around the hour when town dogs give up barking at the same raccoon and the fridge runs out of ambition, I heard my name whispered through the vent. Not a wind accident, not pipes. The exact way my mother said it when she'd found a strand of hair on the bathroom comb and knew it was mine. Mara. I coughed. I whistled a 3-note nothing. I sat up and drank warm tap water so my mouth would be busy. Then it said my name from inside the mattress under my spine. It said it from the closet, polite as a guest who doesn't want to intrude. It said it from the space between the nailed sash and the glass. I put my hands over my ears and tasted mica like old pencil shavings again. By morning, I told myself the lie that keeps lumber towns from eating their young. I'll go up and look, and then I'll be done. The trail to the old mine starts behind the school bus barn. There's a sign now. Forestry land. No unauthorized entry. That means there are still boys in there who think they're men. I took my pack and my mother's old flashlight that has a taped handle and a temper. The voice didn't come from the trail. It came from the mountain in the quiet way a bear moves. It said my name when the moss gave under my boots. It said this way without words by sending pine smell and damp iron in little breaths from the left-hand switchback when I tried to take the right. Jack, you're looking down the road more than at me. That's good. Let the yellow lines be louder than my voice for a while. I hear them too sometimes, the way tires sing on wet pavement, that high, thin note that lives in power lines. When it matches the pitch of the mountain's call, I get the feeling the road is a string and something out there is plucking it with 2 fingers. At the mouth of the old mine, there's a crossbeam with names carved into it. Boys proving they were there. Men proving they were young once. My grandfather's isn't there, because the men who went in for paychecks didn't carve. But if you put your palm to the beam, you can feel where the knife went 100 times, making letters someone might remember. The first gust out of the shaft tastes like pennies and damp stone and a kind of tired most people never meet. The second gust says your name. I didn't go in. Not then. I stood like a person hoping a wave will decide to forget the beach. I waited for the rule to work, that if I didn't answer, it would get bored. The call grew patient, wider, quieter, deeper, like a river that has learned to go through rock instead of around. It used my mother's voice, then dropped her, used Eli's, then dropped him, then used mine, a thing I didn't know how to hate until I heard it. Mara, in my mouth but bigger, as if the mountain had rented me for the afternoon and wanted references. I backed away. The pines leaned in, not to watch but to keep the sound from escaping. I didn't run then either. Running makes a map for the things that can't have legs. I walked down into town where men beat dust off their hats and women stood with hands in flour, and I let the ordinary wash me like creek water over a scraped knee. It helps, for an hour. Then the hour ends. You need to know why I'm in your truck instead of inside the nailed window of my old room. On the 3rd night, always the 3rd night with the mountains. They count like our grandmothers. I woke to hear my name not in the vent or the mattress or the glass, but in the exact rhythm of my breathing. The voice had come inside the one rule I had left: make noise without words. It wore my breath like a dress and went walking. I left the house. I left the street. I left my shoes on the porch steps as if I were going to swim and didn't want to bring in pond on my soles. I walked a mile before I remembered to be afraid. The road had that pale underside of a leaf light the world gets before weather. When your headlights found me, the call softened the way a cat purrs when you stop petting it. I climbed in because steel and heater fan and coffee smell make a room that stone can't fit inside without working at it. Do I believe in curses? I believe in habits old as bedrock. I believe mountains get used to the people who scratch their sides for ore and stump lines across their backs and drive switchbacks into their ribs. And I believe mountains keep a ledger of names the way churches do. My family is in that ledger. My mother didn't fight it. She lived with it like a house lives with a creek in spring. My brother tried to bargain. He answered once and then again, and then the next day he didn't sit down to supper. We had a chair we wouldn't touch for a year. Some nights the chair creaked like a tired man shifting. If you keep driving, I'll tell you the rule I broke and the sound the mind makes when light is thinking about failing. I'll tell you what the carvings look like if you take a photo and look at it later, and the letters aren't what you saw with your eyes. I'll tell you what the voices asked for in the dark, and what I said instead, and why my mouth hurt after, like I'd been clenching a nail in my teeth. But for now, don't say my name back to me, even to be kind. Kindness is a door, and doors are what the mountains like most. Keep your hands steady on the wheel where the road slants. Hear that? The tires singing? That's just rubber and rain, until the pitch changes. If it does, I need you to hum anything you know. A radio jingle, a baseball anthem, birthday song, noise without words. I'll do the same. We'll be 2 people with our mouths full of nonsense while the ridge leans down to listen and finds there's nothing to take hold of yet. You asked if I'm going back up there. The truth fits nowhere tidy. The voices don't live on peaks or in holes. They live wherever names are said like prayers or curses. That means the mountains are in here with us, Jack, just thinner and a little tired from traveling. If we keep them tired until dawn, I might get another day to think of something brave and dumb enough to work. Don't worry about the fog thickening. It's only breath rolling off the pines. If you see a gap in it shaped like a mouth moving, look at the center line instead. When we get to the pull-out above Cedar Gulch, I'll begin again, the part where the mine opens like a throat and I decide whether to sing back. You asked if I was the only one in my family to hear them. I wish I was. A curse is bearable if it chooses one, leaves the rest free. But this one, it travels through blood like an old hymn. Everyone in my line has heard it. Some pretended they didn't. Some didn't live long enough to keep pretending. Take my grandfather. He worked the mines when they still took men down with carbide lamps and left them down there until their faces matched the coal. Hard man. Silent as the stones he cut. But some nights he'd come back with eyes like wet glass, pupils too wide, like he'd been looking at something more than darkness. My mother once told me she woke to him pacing the kitchen, whispering names under his breath, names no one in town recognized. She asked him who they were. He said, "The walls know." The next week, he was gone. Searchers said maybe a bear, maybe a slip near the ridge. But my grandmother never had the body to bury, only the sound of his boots drying by the stove. Then my mother. She was soft-spoken, carried her grief folded neat like handkerchiefs in a drawer. But at night she'd sit up sudden, eyes wide, lips moving. I thought she was praying. Once I put my ear near, and she was saying my grandfather's name over and over, the way you'd call someone in for supper. Another time she whispered mine. So faint, I wasn't sure if it was dream talk or something that had borrowed her tongue. When I asked, she told me a mother sometimes needs to keep her children close even in sleep. But she had the look of a woman who'd opened a window and forgotten whether she shut it. And my brother, Eli. He was the loud one, the brave one. Climbed trees taller than our house, leapt from rocks into swimming holes so deep we didn't know the bottom. The mountains adored boys like him. They love a challenge. He was 17 when he heard it the first time clear. He was chopping wood in the yard when he dropped the axe like a hot coal and turned his head to the ridge. "Did you hear that?" he asked me. I hadn't. He said it was my voice, calling his name from the tree line. "It sounded scared," he said. "Like you needed me." The next weeks he grew restless, wouldn't sit through supper, kept looking up at the ridge like something might step out from behind it any minute. Then one night he told me he'd heard it again. Only this time it wasn't me. It was himself. The mountain was saying his name, in his own voice, asking him to come closer. I told him the rule. Don't answer. He laughed, said it was just the wind, or some old echo bouncing off the slopes. But I saw him lean out the window before bed, whispering, "What?" into the dark. 2 nights later, he was gone. We searched. Dogs, lanterns, shouting until our throats went raw. No prints, no trail. Just his jacket snagged on a branch up by the ridge. The weird part? It wasn't torn or weather-worn. It looked fresh, like he'd set it there, knowing someone would come find it. And when I picked it up, it was damp. Damp like it had just come out of the ground. After that, my mother wouldn't let me near the mountain alone. She'd press a salt packet from the diner into my hand when I left for school, tell me to sprinkle some if I felt watched. She nailed a horseshoe above my bedroom door. She burned sage when the dogs howled too long at night. But protection feels thin when your own blood is part of the problem. The rule in our house stayed the same. When the mountains call, don't answer. Not with words. Noise is fine. Silence is fine. But never give them your name back. My mother said names are like nails. They hold you in place. If the mountain gets its grip, it won't let go. And me? I tried to obey. Most of the time I managed. But I was a child once and children break rules they don't believe in. I was 8 the first time I slipped. It was dusk, fireflies starting up in the meadow, and I heard my name from the ridge, clear as a bell. Not frightening. Sweet, almost. I answered just a little, just a whisper of yes, and nothing happened. No punishment. No ground opening beneath me. I thought my mother's rules were just folklore. So the second time, I answered louder. I shouted back, asked what it wanted. I don't remember what it said. I only remember waking up on the far side of town at dawn, barefoot, with dirt caked under my nails. My mother found me wandering back, shivering, with pine needles tangled in my hair. She didn't scold, she just cried, and that scared me more than anything. After that, I never answered again. But you don't need to answer for them to know you. Once they've had your name in their mouths, they carry it. They whisper it back to you in the quietest moments when your mind is thin as paper. They wait. They don't tire. Years passed. I grew older. I moved away. And I thought I'd escaped it. But you don't escape family. And you don't escape mountains. They have longer memories than we do. You ever hear something calling you, Jack? Not a person. Not a voice on the radio. Something that knows the shape of your name before you even think it. That's what my family's curse is. The mountain learns you young, and then it waits. I didn't come straight to the ridge the day I rolled back into town. I told myself I'd do the sensible thing. Sleep, work, reacclimate. The mountain heard that and laughed in rock. The first night in my old room, I did as my mother had taught me. Salt pinched across the threshold. Nails tapped into the window corners with the back of a spoon. A glass of water turned upside down on the dresser to keep reflections shut. The voices stayed polite, testing the seams. A long breath through the vent. A mouse-quiet whisper from the closet. The tiny, easy creak of my chair moving half an inch when no one touched it. I hummed the tune you hum when cake comes out of the oven and you're not supposed to talk because it might fall. The tune helped. Until it didn't. On the second day, I went looking for a way to be alone that wasn't the old house. Folks rent out Forest Service cabins up canyon. One room, a pot-bellied stove, a pump that shudders when it decides to give you water. I signed my name in a little ledger with a golf pencil so short it hid in my hand, and the caretaker, veins like wire on the backs of his hands, cap with no logo, handed me a key and said, "Don't answer after dark." Like he was warning me about bears. The cabin was a box under the firs, roof sprinkled with needles like someone had sifted tea over it. A porcupine had chewed the back step. Inside, cot, table, stove, 2 chairs that didn't match, a window with bubbled glass that made the forest look like it was breathing. I set my bag down and felt something ease in me, air that hadn't learned my name yet. I made a small supper. I swept because it gave my hands a job. When the light thinned to pewter, I put nails in the window frame anyway. "Are you safer up here?" you ask. The road leans away, and I can hear the question riding the engine. Safer isn't a word mountains use. They have near and kept and known. All the other words are city talk. Night in the cabin had a deeper sound than night in town. The stove ticked like a creature talking to itself. I could hear snowmelt somewhere under the hill, cold and determined. For a few hours, nothing called me anything. Then, sometime past midnight, the glass in the window drew a breath. My mother's voice, as clear as if she were standing outside in her house shoes. Mara, no scold in it, only the gentle hurry she saved for times the bread was proofing fast, and she needed another pair of hands. I coughed. I scraped the chair leg on the floor. I hummed the cake song. The glass fogged, then cleared as if someone were laughing soft where laughter doesn't belong. A moment later, from the stove, a whisper rose, thin as smoke leaking back down a chimney that doesn't want to pull. Mara. The name came out of the pipe like it had learned a new route. I went outside and stood under the firs where the cold ironed me flat. No wind. No creatures bold enough to show. Above, the ridgelines made black teeth against a sky the color of an old bruise. Somewhere up there, timbers held a dark the sun couldn't plead with. I said nothing. I made noise with my boots. I counted backwards from a number that never was my friend. Daylight made me silly. I took the trail that puppies took for the first time, and men with new knees took to prove to themselves they were still here. Sun warmed the backs of rocks where lizards like to believe in summer. Below a switchback, I found the old log flume that once carried water for the hydraulic monitors. Great wounded pipes of staved wood banded with rusted iron, teeth still in their hoops. The mill pond now was a meadow, tufted and soft, the kind of place the town girls had used for pictures in white dresses and boots. At the pond's lip, somebody had stacked 3 flat stones and pushed a nail into the top one. I don't know why that made my throat hurt. The path to the mine isn't marked, but it keeps its own memory. Where the creek turns to find the culvert, you turn too. Where the deer have pressed soil into the shape of a question, you answer with your foot. The closer you get, the more the air takes taste. Pennies, battery tongue, the earth's damp penny jar smell you never forget once you bank it. The voice didn't yank, it didn't plead. It said my name like a ledger entry, like attendance. There are two entrances, or used to be. The first is the collapsed one, cribbing timbers leaning like drunk men holding each other up, slabs of rock that fell decades ago and decided to rest. Someone long back spray-painted, "Keep out" in a red that has faded to old meat, which is maybe the only honest color for that instruction. The second is the adit, that's still a hole, tall enough to walk into without hunching, if you don't mind the way stone stoops for no one. That one had an iron gate 10 years ago. The gate was gone. The hinges remembered. I stood at the mouth and let the air wash over me. 48 degrees, give or take, no matter what season dresses the trees. Little threads of fog unwound themselves inside and came out to die in day. The darkness beyond the first 10 feet didn't shine back, it received. On the lintel timber, someone had carved spirals the size of barn knots, amateur and ancient at once. I ran a finger over one. Splinters spoke in a language I could almost understand. "Don't go in," you say. It's not the first time anyone said that to me here. The mountain likes that sentence. It's a way of walking in without your feet. I told myself I'd only set 1 foot. That's the lie people tell on piers and ledges and the mouths of caves. I put 1 foot on the threshold stone. The world changed temperature from the ankle down. I could feel, with that foot alone, a long, slow heave, the kind a creature makes sleeping under a heavy blanket. Something deeper than drafts moved air back and forth, as if the mountain breathed through narrow places. Then the voices began, not a chorus, not at first. My mother's, Mara, from far within, as though she were in the pantry reaching for the sugar, meaning to ask me to pass the bowl. My grandfather's, scraped and low, like a man who learned to talk where dust takes your vowels. Eli's, not 17, not 5, some age between when boys first learn to keep secrets and last forget to. Each said my name just once, then all three together with a fourth, the worst, my own. Mara, in exactly my throat rolled through stone, my breath borrowed and sent back at me with a rock's patience. I stepped back so hard the heel of my boot skidded. It would have been smart to run, but fear in the woods makes noise the wrong way. I went still and let the pines listen for me while I sorted what part of the call I could disobey without spilling. The voices didn't repeat. They held, like a note on a cello, no bow in sight, just the wood remembering what it knows how to do. At the base of the cribbing where the first entrance caved, a scrap of blue cloth struggled in a splinter. Somebody's work shirt. Cheap, button missing. The color was the exact blue of Eli's letter jacket, back when the school still had a team. I touched it and pulled my hand back fast. It was damp. Not rain damp. Fresh damp, as if someone had just hung a shirt in a bathroom where steam hadn't yet decided to rise. "There's your answer," I told the air, because I needed to be rude to defeat the stupid that would have me polite myself into a grave. No, the mountain did not take offense. Rock does not change expression for your little angers. Instead, from deeper than the timbers, a pebbly sound came, little stones skittering as if a boot had kicked loose what it couldn't help. Then another sound, impossible in that place. A breath, human paste, drawn through teeth. It matched my own in spite of me. When I held mine, it held. When I let mine go, it let. The voices didn't ask again. They were finished with asking. I left a nail between two knots in the lintel, because my mother would have. Because sometimes superstition is just the agreement you make with your own fear. I will do the odd thing, and you will give me back my legs. As I turned to go, a small thing clinked against the stone by my boot. A marble, blue as winter sky, shot through with a white ribbon. Eli had one like it. Boys do. It rolled until it found a dip and settled, watching me the way glass watches. I didn't pick it up. You don't take gifts from a thing that learns. Down the trail, the mountain changed tactics. It didn't speak my name in familiar voices. It tried me with strangers, a man I passed once in the supermarket aisle where the flour lives, the post office clerk when I was 12, a teacher I'd had in 2nd grade who taught us about the water cycle and cried in her car the day her husband left. Mara, from each of them, the music of it right, the pitch true, the invitation clean. I put dirt in my mouth like a child to make my tongue thick and clumsy. I spat and whistled and coughed and counted primes. I whistled so long a jay flew down to scold me for doing its job. By the time I reached the cabin, dusk had gone the color of a bruise. My key stuck twice in the lock like it didn't remember me. Inside, the stove had gone cold, though I'd banked it careful. The upside-down glass on the dresser had righted itself, dry as a bone. That scared me more than the mine ever could. It meant I wasn't the only one keeping house. I could have packed then. I could have shouldered the bag, walked the road, stuck out my thumb. Pride, habit, curse, pick your word, kept me. I told myself I would try one more night and be done. The voices didn't wait for dark. They came while I was chopping kindling in that perfect hour when the forest pretends it's a painting, everything still, birds deciding whether they're evening or morning. Not my mother's, not Eli's, not my own. A fourth voice, new as a knife, old as erosion, saying my name with a mouth made of distance. The mountains had stopped borrowing and started speaking. I dropped the hatchet, left it where it fell, and walked to the road because that's the only language I had left. Asphalt doesn't know your name. It's the one mercy our kind invented that mountains haven't learned to eat. I walked until my feet forgot stones, and the ditch changed from creek talk to culvert talk, and the trees loosened. Your headlights took me up like an argument I was willing to lose. Behind us now, somewhere between our taillights and the last curve we took without thinking, the adit breathes. I can feel it, even in your warm truck, like a draft under a shut door. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what happens past the threshold when light decides it doesn't belong inside, and the rock decides to teach you its alphabet. I'll tell you about the carvings, not names, not letters, but mouths, open circles cut into lintel and wall, and why the voices need hours to finish the word they've been trying to say, since men first took lunch pails into that dark. For tonight, keep the speed steady and your tongue busy with nonsense. If the road starts to sound like a river, it's only tires on broken paint, until it isn't. If the glass in the side mirror fogs from the outside, don't wipe it clear. There are some reflections you don't want back. You want to know what finally pulled me inside. It wasn't courage. Courage is a word people use when they don't want to admit to being stupid. No, it was recognition. The voices stopped pretending to be my mother, my grandfather, Eli. They started speaking in a chorus I didn't know, but somehow did. Words I shouldn't have understood yet sat right behind my teeth, waiting. It was like being homesick for a place you'd never lived. I went back to the mine the next morning. The trail felt shorter than before, as if the mountain had tilted a little to let me slide into its lap. Mist still clung to the ferns, and dew on the spiderwebs looked like strings of pearls strung to catch names instead of flies. I had every intention of standing at the entrance, maybe shouting defiance, maybe leaving another nail as tribute. But the darkness in there had shape. It didn't gape like emptiness. It leaned forward like an invitation. So I stepped in. The first 10 feet were timbered, cribbing black with pitch, each beam scarred by years of hands that carried lunch buckets and drills. Then the support ended, and the tunnel became raw rock, veins of quartz catching the beam of my flashlight in a way that made them look wet. The air was thick, damp, clinging to my clothes like another skin. My footsteps echoed too long, like the floor beneath me was hollow. The voices started immediately, not behind me, not ahead. Inside the stone itself. You ever hear a seashell at your ear and swear you hear the ocean? Imagine that, but instead of waves, it's your brother calling your name from inside a mile of granite. It vibrated my teeth. I forced myself deeper, counting my steps to keep my head clear. At 23, the passage widened into a chamber. The walls were covered in carvings, spirals, lines, figures with arms too long and mouths gaping wide. Some were fresh, knife marks still sharp. Others were worn down to shallow grooves, as though the rock itself had tried to forget them. I shone my light over the floor and froze. A jacket lay crumpled near the far wall. Denim, size too big for me, just right for Eli when he vanished. I knelt. The fabric was damp, not moldy, not decayed. Damp like it had been dropped there last week. A button was missing, the same one he'd lost years before, when Ma had threatened to sew it and never did. Eli. I whispered before I could stop myself. My voice fell flat, swallowed whole by the rock. Then the voices answered. Not one, not two. Dozens. 100. Layered, each one saying my name in perfect unison. The carvings seemed to hum, though my flashlight didn't shake. The spirals looked deeper now, as if they were tunnels themselves. I felt myself leaning forward, my weight shifting toward the floor without my permission. My legs moved like I was a child again, about to answer a call from the ridge. Then I saw it. At the far end of the chamber, half covered in rubble, a tunnel sloped downward. And from that tunnel came movement, not fast, not sudden, just steady, like something was shifting in its sleep. Pebbles rolled toward me, skittering against my boots. The air carried a breath hot and wet, smelling of minerals and something older, like a cellar that's never seen the sun. I stumbled back, my light jerking across the walls. For a moment, I swore the figures in the carvings weren't still. Their mouths seemed wider, their arms stretched farther, reaching. The hum grew louder, pressing against my skull. That's when the flashlight sputtered. Just for a second, the beam narrowed, then bloomed again. And in that second, the voices all stopped. Except one. My own. From the tunnel. Mara. I ran. My footsteps cracked like gunfire in the chamber, ricocheting off stone, chased by that voice I didn't want to own. The carvings blurred as I passed, spirals spinning in my periphery. The damp jacket remained where I'd found it, though I could swear it shifted slightly as if someone had just dropped it. By the time daylight hit my face at the mouth of the mine, my throat was raw from screaming without sound. I stumbled into the trees, every branch like a hand trying to push me back inside. I didn't stop until I reached the road, the asphalt singing under my boots. That night, I dreamed of the chamber. But it wasn't empty anymore. Every carving had a face I knew, my mother's, my grandfather's, Eli's, even mine, etched into the spirals. And they weren't still. They were speaking, mouths opening and closing in rhythm, their voices a low hum that shook me awake. I woke in the cabin with my nails dirty, soil under them dark as coal. My boots were by the door where I'd left them, but my feet were raw, bleeding as if I'd walked barefoot through miles of stone. Jack, I need you to understand something. The mountain isn't just calling me anymore. It's teaching me. Every time I hear my name, it digs deeper, carves more. And I'm afraid that if I go back in, hell, even if I keep listening, it'll finish the word it's been trying to say for generations. And when it does, my name won't belong to me anymore. You asked what happened after the jacket and the tunnel, and the way my own voice came back to me. The easy answer is, I left. The truer one is, I tried. Mountains don't chase the way animals do. They lengthen. They tilt. They move the place where a way lives. That afternoon I boarded up the cabin windows with whatever I could pry loose. Shelves, a busted chair, the lid of the wood box. I knew it wouldn't stop air. I only needed it to slow names. The stove wouldn't take a flame, though I'd split kindling fine as pencils. Smoke sat in the firebox like it had been told to wait. I ate crackers without tasting them and drank from the pump until my teeth ached. Then I packed. Not much went in the bag. Water, a stale heel of bread, my mother's flashlight patched with tape. I left the cabin key on the table because leaving keys in places makes goodbyes feel official. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut tight, and the latch sighed like it had been relieved of a duty. The ridge kept quiet while I crossed the clearing. That's how you know they're watching. It's never in the rustle. It's in the stillness that's too complete. The path to the logging road curves between two firs that grew so close, their trunks are polished where boys used to squeeze through to prove they weren't soft. I turned sideways and slid. As my shoulder brushed bark, the first voice said my name. Not borrowed, not my mother's apron-soft tone, not Eli's eager whistle. A new voice I hadn't heard before, high and thin and a little frayed, like a stringed instrument that spent a winter in a shed. Mara. The sound came from the tree, from the cambium itself, sapwood whispering through rings. I put my hand to the trunk. It was cold. It was alive. It made no sound my palm could feel. The voice didn't repeat. It didn't need to. When you've had a name since before you had sense, you don't mistake it when something else wears it. I set rules for myself, the way a child walking past a graveyard sets rules. Don't step on a crack. Don't look between the slats of the fence. Count to 7, then blink. Mine were, don't let your mouth open unless you're making nonsense. Don't let your eyes rest on any one thing long enough for it to take your measure. Don't let your feet stop. I hummed. I whistled sharp and tuneless. I chewed the inside of my cheek until blood came and copper sat on my tongue like a coin you won't spend. The voices didn't crowd me at first. They took turns like good neighbors. The rock said my name as I crossed an outcrop where the trail clung to a seam. A boulder said it back to me in a rounded, rivered echo. Wind moving through an old culvert-up canyon found Mara in its throat, the way water finds the one low place in a field. Once, a raven landed 3 arm lengths away and croaked something so close to my name I had to swallow a laugh. You can't laugh in the face of a thing that doesn't understand jokes. It will think you're trying to teach it. I slept the first night in a ditch by the logging road, not because it was hidden but because the culvert's mouth faced away from the ridge, and that felt like the small sort of courage I had left. I lay on my side with my pack clutched to my chest and the flashlight under my chin so I could breathe without smelling rust. A mosquito found my ear and sang there, and I was grateful for the small, dumb noise. Coyotes yipped somewhere high and far and honest. The mountain didn't speak until just before dawn, in that thin place where birds haven't chosen their first notes yet. Mara, from the culvert, but in my own breath. I woke to find my mouth open, my tongue making the shape of my name without the rest of me consenting. That's when I learned the worst of it. Sometimes I was speaking along with them and didn't know it. You're gripping the wheel harder, Jack. That's kind. Take a little off. This part doesn't need force. It needs steadiness. If I cough, that's me reminding my mouth who owns it. Day 2 in the wandering was meaner. The sky held heat like debt. Thunderheads stacked behind the western ridges, but lightning refused to spend itself. The air felt metal, like standing under a line of transmission towers when the humidity makes the hair on your arms lift for no good reason. That's a mountain's favorite weather. Infrasound, they call the low stuff you can't hear with your ears, but your gut knows. Folks blame it on nerves. Maybe nerves are just practical. I kept to the road where I could. Trees like to speak in chorus. Asphalt has a way of insisting on solos. Every mile or so, the Forest Service had nailed a little brown sign to a post with numbers white stenciled on it. At one bend, the numbers had been scratched out and replaced with spirals like the ones in the mine, cut into the wood with something sharp and patient. I didn't stop to stare. Staring is how you start keeping company. Past the old quarry, a rusted fan house sits, a cinderblock cube with a corrugated roof and a circular hole where the duct once ran. It used to pull air for the lower tunnels, back when men trusted machines more than their lungs. It shouldn't make noise anymore. It did. A long, slow inhale from the dark square, then a matched exhale, like a sleeping body that had learned to breathe on schedule. When the exhale came, it carried my name. Soft, steady, bored with waiting. I threw a handful of gravel at it, childish. The stones went in without sound. By afternoon, I found a parked pickup with a bed full of chainsaws and oil cans and a lunch pail sitting open on the tailgate. The thermos inside was still warm when I touched it. I called out to see if anyone needed help, the way decent people in the mountains call. The answer came back from 3 directions at once. Mara, in a stranger's baritone I didn't recognize. I backed away, slow. The thermos steam thinned and went to nothing in the hot air as if a breath had taken it. I left the road and moved through salal and huckleberry, where the leaves wet my legs with last night's rain, and the small sticks snapped my name back at me with every step. Have you ever tried not to think of your own name for an hour? It's like trying not to swallow. Every time I bit down on a humming tune, some other part of me whispered Mara under it, and the mountain answered, pleased to be called politely in 2 voices at once. By sundown, the call and answer had matched my stride. My foot hit earth, Ma, the other foot, Ra, rhythm learned and kept. When I tripped on a root and fell to my knees, the silence that followed felt like a reprimand. The trees leaned in to hear if I'd apologize. I didn't. I laughed once sharp like a woman who's broken a dish and refuses to make a face about it. The laugh came back from the ridge in 100 small pieces, a mosaic of my own mouth. I made a plan then that even now sounds foolish telling it to you while your wipers scrape mist. I decided to steal a name. If the mountain wanted mine, I would use another until I could get to town. I tested them aloud, quiet, quick, the way you try on hats in a store when the clerk's in the back. June, Ruth, Lena. They didn't sit right. When I said Mara, the rock said yes. When I said the others, the rock said almost. I tried silence. Silence is a hard name to wear. It makes people around you want to fill you with theirs. Toward dusk, the radio on my phone came alive with a long, slow band of static, even though there was no service up there. Not white noise, not storm. A narrow, thick sound like a finger pressed to a lip. It swelled, then relaxed, then swelled again until you could imagine it had formed peaks and valleys of its own. In the trough between two swells, a voice came through, a sheriff's voice or something wearing it. "Ma'am, are you lost?" The politeness of it nearly undid me. Behind it, my name moved in the static like a trout under dark water. I turned the phone off. The battery glowed on in the black screen for a moment longer than it should have, as if listening. Night 2. I didn't try the culvert. I tucked myself under the overhang of a cut bank where rain had bit in. The dirt there holds history, the layered smell of roots and silt and whatever the last flood decided to keep for itself when it went home. A catenary of power line ran not far off. I could hear it singing a thin, patient note that matched the one you get when you run a damp finger around the rim of a glass. Somewhere in the small hours, while that note crocheted itself through the trees, I felt my lips moving. No voice, just the physical act of forming Mara, press, breathe, curl, the kind of motion you could do in your sleep if your sleep had been borrowed. I bit down on the side of my tongue until I tasted blood and tin. The note from the line shivered and the owls went quiet for a count of 5. When dawn came, the mountain gentled me, for a little, the way a cat gentles a mouse so it can move it without tearing anything important. The light under the firs went the green of old glass forgiving shadows, kind to faces, kind. I let my mouth go slack and my hands unclench, and told myself I could walk straight to the road, and then to the diner, and then to somewhere with a ringing phone, and a man whose job it is to be firm. I was halfway down the grade when a child's voice said my name from the middle of the trail. Not Eli. Not any child I could place by last name or the way their mother parted their hair. Just a child-sounding mouth right in front of me, no body attached to it, saying Mara with that lilt children have when they want you to follow them to see a bird's nest. My legs went warm and light, the way they do when you've stood up too fast. My heart did a trick where it seemed to hop over one beat and then find 3 more in quick succession to make up for being impolite. I stepped to the side to circle whatever wasn't there. The voice stepped with me. I stepped the other way. It didn't like that game. The trees spoke in their own language, a dry-fingered clatter, and the ground under my left boot sunk an inch like a lung sighing. I ran then, not because I wanted to, but because the ground had asked politely for my foot, and I needed to be rude before it learned my manners. Branches took hair, and Salal slapped my calves, and dead wood sitting for years decided it was time to be under me in the exact way to make me look foolish. The trail widened into a rutted run that logging trucks had made and forsaken. Gravel sang underfoot. Somewhere a jay laughed at me, 3 notes falling like little stones down a culvert. At the fork, I chose the wrong way and knew it immediately by the temperature of the air. Some places are cooler because of shade. This was not that. This was the kind of cool that has a door behind it. I stopped, turned, took the other fork, and there, at the edge of the trees where the road shoulders into ditch, into grass, into fence, into field, I saw the town. Small, low, reasonable. The mountains kept their hands on my shoulders until I took one more step and then let go, an adult letting a child cross by themselves to prove they could. I did not go into town. Town is where names are many and easy and ready to be lent. I went to the blacktop and I walked it because noise is a kind of prayer the ridge can't quite steal. That's where you found me, somewhere between the weight of the rock and the lie that a road is a promise. You asked me before if the voices want to kill. No, they want to keep. They want to put you in their alphabet until the word is complete. Think of a choir that never gets to sing the last note. Think of a mouth carved into lintel and wall that needs a living voice to finish the circle. They're patient. They have stone patience. But patience ends when someone makes a promise under their breath and doesn't remember they said it. I must have promised when I was under the mine's cold roof. Maybe I promised as a child yelling what into the trees. The mountain took me at my word and now it wants to collect. These last days it started using me to call me, and that's the part that makes your stomach sit wrong. Sometimes the thing that wants you back will borrow your body to fetch you. You hear the little tremor in my voice now and then. That's not fear. That's the echo that happens when two voices try to sit in the same chair. If it gets worse, you'll know. The consonants get teeth. We're dropping out of the timber a little, see? The fog thins, the road loosens its shoulders, the air smells more like wet hay than wet iron. They don't like the wide country, too much room for a name to get lost. That buys us time, and time is the only currency mountains can't counterfeit without help. One more thing, and then I'll be quiet so you can listen to your engine talk. Back there, just before you picked me up, I made a mistake. I said your name only once, soft as breath just to keep my mouth busy. The mountain heard how I said it. It likes learning new shapes. If you hear something from upslope speaking you back, don't respond. Not with words. Not even with the sort of sound that could be trained into a word later. Hum. Curse without vowels. Clear your throat like a man out of patience. Anything but the shape of yourself. You see how the guardrail scuffs are blacker here? Trucks take this curve too fast when the fog gives the valley back to them and they forget grades have memory. We'll ride the brake light. Steady. If the vent starts to breathe my name, not the fan, not the heat, the vent, I'll slap it. If the radio finds a station none of us pay for and a voice asks if we are lost, you're going to say nothing and change the dial until it's only static with weather in it. We'll get to the valley floor. That's where it's quietest, because stone has to shout there and names go thin in the wind. We'll stop where the map says nothing much, and I'll step out where dirt remembers plows more than it remembers picks. Maybe I'll be lighter by then. Maybe I'll be heavier. If I say your name by mistake, your good name, don't wear it for a while. Leave it somewhere safe. Let it cool. And if between here and there, you hear a child say Mara from where no child is, keep your eyes on the center line and make the noise a man makes when he wants to remember a song but refuses to sing it. That's the only trick I have left that still embarrasses the mountain into waiting its turn. You asked me, Jack, if I think I'll ever be free of it. That's a good question, and a cruel one. I don't know if anyone who's heard their name from the mountain has ever come back clean. The sound lives under your skin like old shrapnel. Harmless some days, aching others, but always there when the weather changes. We rode the grade down, your headlights cutting a narrow wound through the fog. The yellow line wavered under the mist, but steady in your hands. For a while it was quiet enough that I believed maybe I'd outrun it. Asphalt has its own hum, and with the heater blowing and the rain tapping the windshield, I almost believed the voices would stay on the ridge. Almost. The first sign it wasn't done came from the radio. We hadn't touched the dial, but the static shifted. Beneath the hiss, a rhythm emerged. 3 syllables, over and over. Not words, not at first. Just sound that could have been road noise, could have been interference. Then it sharpened. Ma. Ra. My name in Morse code static. You reached to switch it off, but I caught your wrist. If you turn it off, it only finds another way in. Better to let it burn itself out where you can hear it. You kept driving. The fog thinned as we hit the valley, the kind that folds itself back into the folds of the earth, not wanting to be seen by lowlanders. The fields opened wide on both sides, black soil wet with rain, irrigation ditches glinting faint. For a mile or two, the mountains looked like a wall in the rear view, but the voices travel. They don't need cliffs and shafts to carry themselves. Once they've learned your name, they can ride anything. Wind, wire, water. It came next through the telephone poles. Every mile a pole, every pole with its own faint hum. At first just a pitch, high and steady. Then the pitch wavered, dipped, rose, until the sound formed syllables. Ma, ra. It hopped from pole to pole, chasing the truck, keeping pace with your tires. When we passed one, the next picked it up. A relay of my name across the valley floor. I pressed my palms to my ears, but it was no good. The sound wasn't in my ears. It was in my chest, my tongue, the hollow behind my eyes. You told me to breathe steady, keep talking nonsense, so I did. I recited the ingredients of a cereal box from memory, sang half a baseball jingle off-key, muttered prime numbers until my teeth hurt. But in the pauses between, the name still came back, as if my words were scaffolding for the thing that wanted to climb through. Then I realized something worse. I wasn't just hearing it. I was saying it. My lips were moving in time with the poles. Mara, Mara, Mara. I clamped my hand over my mouth and bit down until I felt blood. But still, the rhythm carried on, muffled, but real. The mountain had found its way out through me. We hit the straight stretch near the grain silos. That's when it changed tactics. A child's voice, same as before, but now from the ditch beside the road. Then another from the field. Then another from the silo itself. Dozens of them circling, each one calling my name, eager, hungry. They weren't echoes anymore. They were rehearsals, each voice practicing how best to say me. I begged you not to stop, and you didn't. You kept the wheel steady, even when the fog broke and figures appeared in the mist, shapes at the roadside, pale and wavering. Not solid, not shadow. Outlines. Men in work clothes with lunch pails, women in aprons, children barefoot, their mouths moving in silence. Their faces weren't right. They looked carved, as if the stone itself had tried to remember what faces should be. Each one turned as we passed, mouths forming my name in unison. The truck's engine strained. The tires sang. The night thickened around us until the headlights were just a tunnel of false safety. I kept humming nonsense through clenched teeth, but every few breaths, my hum shifted, bent, and the sound of my name slipped out between notes. And then, silence. No radio static, no poles humming, no children, no carved faces in the fog, just the engine, the rain, and the tires. A silence so complete it felt wrong, like the world had stopped listening. My shoulders loosened for the first time in days. I thought maybe we'd broken through, left the mountain behind. But silence is worse than noise. Noise is honest. Silence is waiting. I turned to the window, and there it was. The reflection. Not mine. Not yours. A face in the glass, pale, eyes hollow, mouth moving in time with the silence. It shaped my name, though no sound came. Its lips formed it perfectly again and again. When I looked closer, I saw the face was mine. Not tired, not dirty, not cut. Perfect. Untouched. Like I'd never left the mountain. I tore my eyes away, pressed my forehead to my knees, and didn't look again until the truck slowed. That's now. This stretch of road, this pull-off by the old gas station with its windows boarded and pump rusted solid. You're kind to take me this far, Jack. I won't ask you to carry me farther. The road ahead is yours. The road back is mine. Do I think I'll be safe if I keep walking? No. The mountain doesn't stop because I leave the ridge. It wears patience like skin. It will call my name until the end of all things. And one night when my mouth is tired, I'll answer. Maybe not with words. Maybe with a breath that happens to shape the syllables. And then I'll be theirs. The question is not whether the mountains want us. The question is whether the mountains ever forget. And I don't think they do. So if you hear your name in the static of your radio, or in the hum of a wire, or whispered from the ditch on a foggy night, don't answer. Don't even think about answering. Noise without words, Jack. That's the only rule that still works. Now let me out here. The fog is thicker, but the ground feels steady underfoot. I'll walk until the road decides it's had enough of me. And if you ever drive this way again, don't stop if you see me. Don't roll your window down. Don't even look too long, because it won't be me asking. I let her out by the boarded-up gas station. She walked into the fog without looking back, her figure swallowed by mist. The road ahead stretched dark and silent. The mountains crouched in the distance like old listeners waiting for a word. I shifted into gear, headlights cutting the night, and drove on.